Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to the Knuckle Sammich podcast, the official MMA podcast of Sauce on the Side. As always, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
Sit down and grab yourselves a soda, fellers.
Guys, today we're going to talk about our, I don't know how I feel about the Sodi reference. I felt like you turned into a 90-year-old man instantly.
Shout out to my high school shop teacher.
All right. You actually went to high school?
Well, I went to shop class.
Okay. You were enrolled. You got your diploma in shop classing. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the biggest winners and losers of Fight Night 135 in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we're going to talk a little bit. There's no fights this weekend, so this kind of gives us the freedom to kind of take this show where we want and just kind of talk about upcoming fights we're looking forward to. And as always, your latency, 10 seconds of sweat, will be back. He will break down the Justin Gaethje and James Vick fight, so be sure to be listening for that. But latency, before you get your 10 seconds of sweat in, you know what to do. Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford, a Sauce on the Side production. All right, so we're going to go ahead and break down UFC Fight Night 135 in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we're going to start off hot and heavy with the big matchup, the headliner of the night, Justin Gaethje and James Vick. But before Thomas gets his chance to take his crack at breaking down his first fight of the night, we are going to send you straight into Latency's 10 seconds of sweat.
Okay, so Vick and Gaethje. Last week on the show, I took Vick because he actually finished his dude really quick. And I thought Gaethje had hands of pudding with Johnson because that fight went like almost 3 rounds, I think, and it shit ton of punches the whole time. Fight of the year, evidently, I didn't think it was, but people hyped me did. So, we had to fight Vick the whole lot of kicking and jabbing, and he kept his distance. So it's how his time of being a scared little bitch. He had the killer that I thought he was, and this is what I knew my pick was going to be wrong. I knew he didn't have a chance in this fight. And then Gaethje got close and threw some really hard punches and knocked Vick out. Vick was completely outclassed and should be honestly be embarrassed by the performance he put on. It lasted, 2.5 minutes maybe? I didn't look at the time.
1:27.
Yeah. Okay, 1 minute and a half. I look at the time, but yeah, that was embarrassing for Vick. I don't know what his next move is. Probably out of the UFC.
Probably out of the UFC.
He's 9-2 in the UFC. He's gone.
Gone.
I think it's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I don't know if he's out of the UFC. I think he's going to have to piece his chin back together.
You're going to Japan, going to Pride.
Go to Pride. I think Pride's done.
Yeah.
So he can't drop down to Pride. But Shackelford, Leighton almost hit it on the head there. Just came out, tossed a bomb, and it landed. Take us through that fight, and what did you see from both guys?
Leighton's breakdown was really good. That was exactly right. Gaethje came straight forward. Vick kind of stood a distance, hit a few front kicks, tried a few jabs, just basically backpedaling and circling off. Doing a pretty good job. He actually hit 2 round kicks, 2 body shots to the liver. Second one actually hurt Gaethje. He kind of backed off. He stumbled. I think he tripped a little. He didn't stumble like he was like falling down. And the thing that Gaethje did really, really well, which when I broke it down, I said his leg kicks and his collar tie with an uppercut was his best punches, and he had a strong overhand right. He didn't even get a chance to use his 2 best weapons, the leg kicks and the uppercuts. Basically, a lot of guys, when they fight Vick, because he's so long, they almost get caught standing and looking to try and wait for their opening to come in, so they rush in. And when they rush in, that's when he catches them. And he is a strong puncher, so he can really hurt guys and keep them back. Gaethje, even though he did get hurt, he just pressed forward, put his head on his chest. I think they got into a clinch at one point, which Vick circled out of. Second time, he walked him back to the cage. Just like I talked about, Vick keeps his hands low because he's used to being further away. I think he thought there was more distance between him and the cage than what there was. And so when he went out to back out and circle, Gaethje's head was almost on his chest. He pawed a little left up just to find the chin, and then a huge overhand right and just put him down. And Vic was out for, I don't know how long. I told you, probably a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes after he was already down. The doctors were around him, the security's in there. Gaethje walked over to, say good fight or whatever, and Vic tried to double leg him. We're minutes after he'd been KO'd. So just beautiful performance by Gaethje. And the reason I picked Gaethje was I thought maybe Vic, although he was 9-1 in the UFC, I kind of had the suspicion that he hadn't fought a guy at Gaethje's level. And that turned out to be true,
Yeah, I agree with you there. And last week we were singing the praises of Gaethje, talking about, how he's fought all this upper-level competition. His record's not as good as James Vick, but he's been taken to those deep, dark depths of fights, and he's really been pushed. And, we had talked about how we thought Gaethje was going to be able to finish this fight later on. It kind of surprised me that it was in the first round. I don't think that, Gaethje is that much better than Vic, but I think he just got him at the right moment. And like you had said last week, you thought that Gaethje would land that one big overhand bomb and in the fight, and he was able to do that. I was really impressed by Gaethje. It shows you that, even though he's lost to the top-tier guys, he still deserves to be right amongst the breaths of those same guys. So we'll kind of touch on the second to last fight of the night here. Michael Johnson ends up picking up a split decision against Andre Touchy-Feely. Split decision, very weird. These fights, both split decisions, in my opinion, were scored very close and very odd if you look at the judges' scorecards and how they actually scored the fight. So if you guys were keeping up with the picks last week, we went 3-3. I think we got hosed on 2 decisions, though, that were splits. So the Michael Johnson split decision, they scored it 29-28 in favor of Johnson. And then 27-30 in favor of Feely. And then 29-28 in favor of Johnson. Very odd scoring. Shackelford, do you think that they got this decision right? And kind of break this fight down for us. What do we see from both guys?
I think this one got taken away from Feely. I didn't like the decision. A lot of people on Twitter and just social media in general thought Feely won. I know, I believe they said that, like the CompuBox numbers or whatever they're called in the UFC, Johnson's punch count was kind of a lot higher than Feely's.
They were almost identical strikes thrown, but Johnson landed 30 more strikes.
And see, I would dispute that because he didn't land hardly at all. Basically, the way the flow of the fight went, the first round was probably the most even round in my eyes. Basically, Johnson was throwing a little bit more, but he was backing up and wasn't landing like at all. It seemed like Feely was throwing kind of 1-2 shots, high kick, jab, whatever, and he was pressing forward the whole time, and he was landing, and they were the harder punches. I gave that round to Feely. Round 2, Johnson came out, was pressuring a little bit more. But then with like 2 minutes in, Feely gets a takedown and ends up getting Johnson's back and almost chokes him out with an RNC. I mean, they showed a close-up. Spit bubbles are flying out of Johnson's mouth. Basically, he just hung in there, just toughed it out. It wasn't really a choke. It was probably more of like compression on his jaw type thing going on. But he had his back for 2 minutes. I mean, there's nothing Johnson could do other than just blaze him the last 2 minutes of the round or last minute of the round to win that round. Johnson did end up slipping out at the end, getting a little ground and pound, but then Feely threw on a triangle, and if he'd had a little bit more time, probably would have choked him out with a triangle. He ended up letting it go. So that round, clearly a Philly round in my eyes. I mean, you don't take someone down and have their back for 2 minutes and it's not your round when nothing else happened. Round 3 came out. Now this is the problematic round. They were even on their feet for the first couple minutes. I believe that like with 4 minutes left, Feely hit a takedown. Got a little control. He was on him for about 30 seconds. And then they came into a scramble. And for all you wrestling kids out there, this is something that my coach preached to me, and I'll preach till the day I die. When you're in a front headlock and you're trying to go behind, you have to block the arm. If you don't block the arm, all he does is raise it and stand right back up. I watched it. I got pissed off. I called my buddy with a 6-year-old on the wrestling team, told him to do 10 go-behinds right now, block the arm every time. That may have cost him the fight, honestly, because the feed, it was a little bit closer that round. I still would have given Feely probably all 3 rounds. I mean, 1 and 3, I guess, as far as the feet go, they were kind of even, but with the takedown and the forward pressure and landing the harder shots, I just think all the way around Feely won. Not saying that it wasn't a close fight. It wasn't like he was blowing him out of the water. But you know how it is. When you're watching a fight, you can just tell who's winning.
Right.
And I thought he was. I think, and I hate to do this to these guys. I know we've had some guests on here that have trained with him a little bit. They may know him. But the Team Alpha Male guys, Danny Castillo, they did a huge disservice to Feely in the third. Their instructions were, hey, Johnson's going to be pressuring, coming out crazy hard because he's clearly down 2 rounds. They gave him the confidence that, hey, you're up 2 rounds to none. Just don't get knocked out in this round, and you've won this fight easy. It wasn't necessarily that close. And we'd already seen one horrible split decision call, which we'll talk about in a little bit, earlier in the night. Whereas Johnson's corner said, hey, these rounds are even. We don't know who's winning. Go out there and do your best. And, it is what it is. It's a loss for Feely. It's a win for Johnson. It kind of keeps Johnson around. Bummer for Feely. That's unfortunately just some of the biggest problems in MMA still tend to be the judges. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, honestly. And your fight breakdown was perfect because I do feel like they do their fighter a disservice unless you are obviously up. Like, it is just clear cut you're up. You got to tell them to go out there and, do their best to win that round and tell them that they have to win that round. Because if they're just trying to coast, they're more than likely going to lose the last round. But like you said, the third round was even close then. Yeah. And the deciding factor, in my opinion, would have been the takedown by Feely. Because you look at a fight, if it's close on the feet and the guy scores a takedown at the very end, usually that's enough to seal the victory for the guy and seal that round.
And he had about 30 seconds of control. It wasn't like right down and pop back up. It wasn't questionable. He took him down. So I thought the takedown was enough to take the third. Round 2 was a clear win for him, and really round 1 with the striking I thought was pretty substantial. But it's stupid. Dana White said like years ago, like, don't leave it in the hands of the judges, and that's a stupid thing. You should have competent people sitting ringside.
I agree with that.
Can tell the winner of a fight, but it just don't happen.
I think the only good thing that comes out of this fight is that Michael Johnson does get to hang around because, like you and I have said, we really like watching him fight, and he's a really fun guy. So that is a good thing that he gets to stick around. It's a bummer that Feely gets a win like that, ripped right out of his hands, and losing a split decision is the ultimate bummer. So we'll go to the other fight that you talked about as a split decision. Very, very questionable. And in my opinion, this is even worse than the Michael Johnson fight. Because you're looking at this fight, and I'm actually looking at the judges' scorecards right now. It's Courtney Casey. She picked up a split decision win against Angela Hill. This is another one that got us on our picks. And you look at these judges' scorecards. It is very bizarre, and I don't think I've ever seen a scorecard filled out like this. So, for Courtney Casey, they have her winning... The 2 judges had her winning. One had her winning 30-27, which I do not understand, and the other one has her winning 29-28. The one judge that scored 29-28 decision for Angela Hill actually had the exact opposite scorecard as the other judge who had picked Courtney Casey winning 2 rounds to 1. So the one judge, obviously, 30-27, all for Courtney Casey, but the other had first round win and a third round win for Casey, and the other judge had a first round win and a third round win for Angela Hill. So they could not have been more opposite on their scoring. So how do you think that these judges were able to come to that conclusion of a 30-27 and then completely opposite 28-29 rounds?
I have no clue on this fight. Johnson Feely, there might have been, like I said, in that first round, Johnson ended up on top. Maybe the last 20, 30 seconds did maybe get a little ground. Like, you could, if you were a dickhead, you could really nitpick and be like, oh, well, he did this, this, and this. But I'd still give the fight to Feely. This one, I don't know what happened in this one. I mean, Angela Hill, she pushed the fight to Casey the whole time, threw a ton, landed almost everything she threw, wasn't getting hit, and she was having a clear effect. Like, she was hurting Casey the whole time. I forget which round it was. Round 2, Casey got a takedown, which Angela Hill quickly turned into an armbar, almost subbed her. She ended up letting it go, popped right back up, continued on the feet. And that's the way the fight went the rest of the time. I mean, in the third, she defended all the takedowns. I just don't know. I mean, Hill, in the third, Hill even rocked her. I mean, towards the end of the round, about a minute left, Hill wobbled her. Maybe, the only thing I can think is maybe because Hill, she just doesn't have a lot of power in her hands. So she's hitting, but the girl's kind of still just standing there, you know what I mean? So Casey was getting punches off. So Hill would hit probably 2, 3, 4 punch combos, and then Casey may throw 1 or 2 that hit Hill. It was a discrepancy. It was a huge discrepancy in striking. The one takedown in the fight got quickly turned into an almost finishing move for Hill, and she still lost. I'd be protesting huge for Hill. Again, this was the two biggest problems in MMA is the weight cutting issue and the judges. And it feels like when I was scrolling through Twitter looking at both of these fights, it was amazing how fighters in the UFC, some of the best coaches out there, they were just putting, damn, that decision was shit, but what are you going to do? You know, every one of it's demoralizing. It's, you know, they're just like, well, you know, if it goes to the judge's decision, no matter how you feel, you could get screwed over. So, and the big problem is they lose half their purse. So say if she was getting 20 and 20, an extra, you know, flat 20,000, and then a 20,000 for a win, those judges just screwed her out of $20,000.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that the weight cuts obviously is the biggest problem with the UFC right now, but then right behind that is the judging, because there is no reason that two judges have completely polar opposite scorecards, because they're watching the same fight. Exactly. They have the same angle. Like, they're sitting together.
That they don't know what they're looking at. I mean,
no.
And this was a mostly stand-up fight. So, if, you know, that's most of the time when they say, oh, that was a bad decision. A lot of times, maybe they don't know as much about grappling or something like that. But this was a stand-up fight. If you just have 3 boxing judges that have only seen a boxing match and they watch that fight, Angela Hill should have won every single time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't see how they come to this decision, especially whenever you look at the numbers. It seems like Courtney Casey the whole time would just not even throw a good takedown attempt, but she would never hit. And then Angela Hill tries for one takedown. She succeeds. She hits her with almost everything she throws. I mean, whenever somebody throws and lands 54% of their significant strikes, that is very eye-opening. It seems like everything they're throwing is hitting. And like you said, I think the only thing that really could have hurt her was her lack of punching power. And the judges just thought, hey, Courtney Casey really didn't get hit that hard, so, you know, we're just going to give her the decision. Obviously, it makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to you. But we'll get to some fights finally that had some finishes. In Brian Barberena was able to get a first-round TKO against Jake Ellenberger. We actually hit this one right on the head. Barberena actually had 2 knockdowns in the fight. What did you see that was impressive for Barberena, and what do you think could possibly be next for him?
Barberena, this fight you can't really judge anything off of it. I mean, Ellenberger, that's his 4th straight loss. 4 straight TKO, KO loss. He just didn't have anything left. I mean, maybe the first 10 seconds he looked okay, but other than that, it was just Barberena just kind of hitting him with shots at will and dropped him, and then I think Ellenberger went in for basically just a hold on to the leg takedown. Barberena popped back up and it blasted him cold. There's nothing you can take from this fight. As far as Barberena next, I mean, there's a lot of fights. Maybe James Krause. I don't know if you saw, we didn't talk about him, but he was kind of a big winner of the night. James Krause, formerly a 55-pounder, trains out of Kansas City. Might be out in Vegas a little bit too. He at Extreme Couture maybe, because I know he's friends with Tim Elliott, and Tim Elliott went out there to train with Robert Follis, which Max Roshkoff in that interview the other day talked a little bit about before Follis passed away. But he bumps up from 55. He starched Warley Alves.
Yeah, that was an impressive win.
In the second. So that'd be a good fight, Barberena. I mean, unfortunately at 70 we got that weird, Covington, Till, Woodley, Wonder Boy. It's kind of weird up there. I could see Barberena Krause going at it. That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that would be a very good fight to lead towards because, both guys are going to be coming off of obvious wins, and they fought on the same night, so it'd be easy to pick a date for both these guys to fight.
Before we jump to another one, I do want to say something about Ellenberger. I mean, we kind of forget how good he was. He's been in the game, I want to say, a little over 10 years. Some of his wins, Jose Landy Johns, Pele, I don't know if you heard of him. He beat Pat Healy early, lost to Carlos Condit, there's one. But he went on a run. He beat Mike Pyle, John Howard, Carlos Edward Roca, Sean Pearson, Jake Shields. He had a run where he TKO'd Shields, beat Diego Sanchez, and then Martin Kampman stopped him, but then he basically fought the best of the best at 170 for probably a 2 or 3 year span and went 7-2, 7-3. I mean, people kind of forget because he's lost 9 out of his last 10 fights how good he was 4 or 5 years ago. To me, he is the picture perfect example of stayed in the game too long. Just didn't have a chin left by the end of it. He also jumped camps back and forth, just kind of always trying to find his place. That might have something to do with it, but, I was glad to see him retire. He's had some wars. Look up some of his old fights. Diego Sanchez and him had an insane battle before Diego kind of fell off. Glad to see him go. Not in a mean way, just glad it's better for him.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We talk about guys all the time. We'd rather see them leave early than leave late. And, unfortunately, he hung around too long. But I agree with you. I think the timing is as good as any if you're going to wait till now for Jake Ellenberger, because I think his time's past as being a guy who's going to be competitive. Actually, a big underdog win. Davison Figueiredo picks up the win, second round TKO of John Marega. How in the world was Figueiredo able to pull off this win? You and I both had Marega picked to win, and even Vegas had him as the favorite. What did you see in this fight, and what were the key points of the fight for Figueiredo?
When I broke Figueiredo down, when I watched his fights, I said he's 14-0. He was kind of a wild man. He just kind of threw caution in the wind, kicks, punches, didn't have one set style, didn't have a set route to victory either. And I almost never pick guys like that. If you've listened to the show before, if two guys that are pretty equal are fighting, but one guy has a direct route of where he generally takes fights, I pick them a lot because those guys are, I don't make a game plan. I just go, that doesn't work 99% of the time.
No, it does not.
Unless you're, Conor McGregor or some of those other top guys have said it. I think Robbie Lawler says that a lot. Like, unless you're those guys, it doesn't work. But this time it did work. So he basically just got Moraga to get into a firefight with him. Came right out, winging punches. Moraga went right at it with him. And probably the beginning and the end was actually Moraga dropped Figueiredo down to a knee. Hit him with a punch, sat him down to a knee, and then he popped right back up, took Moraga down, brutalized him from top, and then when Moraga got up, he finished him off with a gigantic body shot, and it was done from there. So Figueiredo is much, much, much better than I thought. The other thing about his record was I thought in the UFC, I thought he'd actually lost a fight. So the dude that fought Shorty's first fight, Jared Brooks, I believe was his name.
Yeah, it was Jared Brooks.
They had a split decision. I thought Brooks won that fight. Just me personally watching it, and a lot of other people did too. So I really thought he should probably have an L while he was in the UFC. And Moraga's been such a tear. It was on such a tear. I just, same thing we kind of talked about Vic and Gaethje. I just didn't feel Vic was kind of on that level of guys. I didn't think Figueiredo was too, which goes to show you kind of just never know when they are. So
right.
The other big thing about this dude is I don't know if it's his manager. This is a little history lesson for you guys. If you've never heard of Waleed Ismail, he's a madman. He was BJJ legend in Brazil. Him and Renzo Gracie had a bunch of back and forth back in the day. He actually choked out Royce Gracie with a clock choke. The video's insane. Like I don't know it's like a soccer stadium full of people, and he's going against Royce when Royce was winning the first UFCs, and he chokes Royce out with a freaking clock choke. The crowd goes nuts. He's had a long fight with the Gracies and stuff, but I don't know if he's this dude's manager or his friend or coach or what, but he had the weirdest post-fight interview. I don't even know if he translated what Figueiredo was saying. Waleed was just kind of going nuts there. So if you don't know Waleed Ismail, look his crazy ass up. If you want to know what psychosis looks like, look into that man's eyes. I can't wait for Figueiredo to come back just so I can see Waleed Ismail on the mic again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be looking forward to that. So with Figueiredo, he is undefeated. He did pick up a huge win in the eyes of most of the people in the UFC. Do you think that this could be a guy that they're going to fast track just immediately to the top and get some of those top level guys at that weight class?
I do. I mean, we're at 125. Who we're working with here? We got Joseph Benavidez. I feel is still in the mix because he has that win over Cejudo, even though he did just lose to Sergio Pettis. And then you got Sergio Pettis. You got Mighty Mouse. You got Cejudo. But who else is there? I mean, you could easily throw Figueiredo in there with those guys. I don't know exactly where or who or how high you want to throw him in at. I'm going to check up real quick, just look at the rankings. So you got Pettis is 2, Joey B, they still got at 3. You got Ray Borg, which Ray Borg's getting ready to... Well, hell, they already got Figueiredo ranked at 6. So,
oh wow!
I think Jussier, Formiga, and Ray Borg have a fight coming up. So you got to be looking at either Joseph Benavidez, Sergio Pettis, because those guys are going to be looking for fights. It's going to be one of those two guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm surprised to see him jumped all the way up to 6.
Yeah, that blows me away.
I did think, though, with this win, as impressive as it was, and the opponent that he had in Moraga, he's well respected in the UFC. I figured that with the undefeated record, he would move up in the rankings, but I didn't think he'd be all the way up to 6. That's impressive. So obviously they're going to be looking for one of those top level guys, and I kind of figured that after the way that he had won. So I'm I'm very interested to see Figueiredo's next fight because, even if he goes out there and does not pick up the win, it's still going to be a fun fight to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to be a guy at the 125 weight class that's going to be able to shake some things up and be able to go out there and put on an impressive fight for people to be locked into. And it'll just be all around fun, win or lose for this guy, because he goes out there and he just, like you said, throws caution to the wind and tries to make it a fun fight. So probably the easiest fight to pick for you this last week was Eric Anders. Picks up a third-round TKO against Tim Williams. Only had 18 seconds left in the fight to be able to pick up that win. Take us through that fight and how exactly was Anders able to pick this fight up? How was he able to finish it? And did you see anything that you really liked out of Anders during this fight?
Yeah, his grit, his heart, really. I mean, he had to come back. So, Mean Machine, Mr. Williams, just completely shocked everyone. He actually hurt Anders in the first round. I mean, Williams for sure won the first round. Probably not far off from being a 10-8. He really had Anders reeling that whole first round. And then all of a sudden, Anders woke up and did what we thought. He kind of started pushing forward. He's a southpaw, so he started using that left, mixing it up. I can't remember if he worked in some takedowns or not, but just overall, really his conditioning was a lot better than Williams. Williams started to fade. Even though he won the first round, he started to fade about midway through the second. And Anders just overall worked him over. Big left hands, clinching him, moving him around. The finish, which maybe we should have had latency check that finish out too, hit him with as close to a Pride Days soccer kick as you can get legally, and damn near kicked Williams' head off, KO'd him. He might have snuck out with one there. That slow start. He got off to a slow start.
He might have learned that kick back with his days at Alabama. Well, he might have been training with the kickers.
Yeah, somebody threw out a tweet like, what position did Anders play again? Was a place kicker? Because that's what it looked like. It looked like he was a place kicker running out there to bomb that head. Good fight. Really great fight. It showed that he's got the toughness to hang in there. And he can pull the trigger because he definitely didn't that first round. So lots of room to work for him. Basically middleweight. Everybody from like number 12 all the way down is either hurt, no longer a 185 pounder, or booked for a fight. So he's probably looking at like a Christoph Jocko, maybe Uriah Hall coming after a loss or something. So I'm okay with seeing him go against any of the top, 15 down to like 6 or 7. I would hold off on any of those really top guys like Jacare or Weidman, Gastelum. Give him another year or so.
Yeah, I think Uriah Hall would be a perfect candidate for a fight because Uriah Hall is a big name, and that would be a good test for Anders. So rarely do we talk about guys who are able to, who actually lose a fight, but able to win the night. And by winning the night, we just say that they move their stock upward in the UFC. Tim Williams, I think he's a perfect candidate to be one of those guys out of this night who did lose the fight, but I think his stock did rise.
Oh yeah.
Because I was looking at the judges' scorecards, and he actually did pick up the win in the judges' eyes, which we say, take that with a grain of salt.
They had him winning.
He won the first round, and then he ended up he did lose the second round. But to be able to go into a fight against Anders and look like there's a route for him to be able to finish the fight, and he did pick up the first round. I think Tim Williams is one of the biggest winners of the night.
Yeah, he's a good 0-2 UFC fighter. I swear to God, if you've never seen Judge Dredd back in the day, you need to watch it. This dude's got the creepiest trap muscles I've ever seen. One goes up like 9 inches, 10 inches. The other one's like 3 inches tall. He looks like he has a deformity. I'm actually going to look into it. If he has some kind of deformity from birth, I'm going to feel bad for calling this dude Mean Machine. he looked really good, man. He looked really good. He was just going against a superior athlete that just outlasted him a little bit. So I don't want to see him drop him, especially at 185. They need as much.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They need as many tough dudes as they can get in there.
Yeah.
I thought Leighton raised his hand. I thought we were about to make a promo vid to send in for him.
No, he did impress. So what other people that we didn't talk about were the biggest winners of the night? Obviously, there were some impressive wins, like you said, with James Krause. Mickey Gall also looked good. But who do you think was the biggest winner of the night?
It's got to be Gaethje, right? I mean, dude comes in like 18-0. Thinking, this guy might be able to go right to the title within a couple fights, has an insane fight, and then drops 2 insane fights. So for him to come and starch, because there was rumblings that, hey, maybe he's not top tier. And Vic is a guy that's, I think he was ranked like 11, but it's a good test. It's a good test to see if you are, because I think you could take Vic and throw him in several other organizations and he could be the champ right now,
Oh, yeah, I agree
so
with that.
I would have to go with like a Gaethje. Figueiredo's up there. As far as other guys that we didn't actually do their cards, like we talked about Krause earlier, he bumps up to 70 and just kills Warlley Alves. A girl named Joanne Calderwood, a little Scottish girl, she ends up hitting a super nasty armbar, getting a win. Mickey Gall absolutely starched his dude. And I listened to an interview with him. He had no clue he was on that far down on the card. He thought he was still on the FS1 prelims. He was actually on the FS2 prelims. So the way they break it down is they did like 3 fights on Fight Pass, 2 fights on FS2, 3 on FS1, and then the big card was on FS1. But they break it down into like levels. He didn't even know he was on FS2.
That's actually pretty bad,
That's horrible. And like, there's no reason he was fighting the guy he was fighting. That guy was coming off 2 years, hadn't fought in 2 years from a USADA ban. Like, I don't know what they're doing. The dude just beat Sage Northcutt. You got Sage Northcutt 2 cards ago, co-headlining a card. You got a guy that beat the brakes off of him 2 fights onto the FS2 card.
Oh, and even CM Punk. He was CM Punk's first fight.
Oh, yeah.
He was the guy that they threw to the wolves, and then you throw CM Punk back on a main card for an actual UFC, like, pay-per-view event, and
they just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's in complete disarray. They don't have guys ranked properly. I think that they need to sit back and reevaluate themselves. And correct me if you think I'm going off, kind of into left field on this, but I think the UFC, they just need to have a meeting at this point and say, guys, what are we valuing at this moment? Because I don't think that they're valuing guys appropriately, and whether it's just based off of dollar signs and stuff. You have Mickey Gall, who is fighting on FS2, who's beat 2 guys that you continually put on pay-per-view events, and he's better than that. Yeah. He's better than those guys.
Not only that, but he was on the Dana White looking for a fight thing. It's not like he doesn't have a personality. I mean, I've
like
this
him
before. Matt Lindland is kind of the thing that people use when they talk about this, because he was the first guy that he had no personality. His fighting style was take him down, they ain't ever getting up, and that's how he won fights. And that was always the argument. It was like he was the best.
So he's Tyron Woodley.
He was Tyrone times 1,000. He was Tyquill plus a roofie in the Tyquill. So, but that was always people. That was their, they're like, well, hell, he ain't going to get any more fights because he's boring as hell. It ain't like Mickey Gall's that. He's a young kid from, like, Jersey. He's got a mouth on him. He's from Jersey. He's got a mouth on him. He's training out in, he's training out in L.A., I think he said now. So he's got a little better training partners. He was at a smaller academy in Jersey, so there's no reason that his skills are good. He's got the mouth like that can pump fights up. There's no reason to have the guy, and you've already pumped a bunch of money into promoting him. It would be an easy sell.
It would be an easy sell for the UFC at this point with Mickey Gall. The way that he's been able to win fights and the guys that he's beat. I mean, you can. I know that in a true person who knows mixed martial arts, if you say, hey, he beat CM Punk, they're going to laugh at that. But the regular Joe Schmo is going to sit back and be like, oh, man, this guy beat CM Punk and he beat Sage Northcutt. Somebody who doesn't really understand that, like, that would be an easy sell to people.
Huge.
For the people that actually understand mixed martial arts and can see the value in guys, they see the value in him already because they're sitting back thinking, just like we are, how the hell is this guy not fighting on the FS1 card? Why is he so far down? And we talked about it last week. You even hit on it. Hey, they even had Mickey Gall down here at the very beginning of the fights.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how they're trying to evaluate talent at this point.
They wonder why they only have 2 or 3 guys that can sell those big pay-per-views. They don't do a good job of promoting the guys. There's some guys you just can't promote. I mean, that's just all there is to it. I remember Josh Neer back in the day, the dentist. Dude could fight his ass off, but talking to him was like talking to a brick wall. They'd do these interviews, and there was just nothing there. It was just like, I'm going to kick ass. I'm going to knock his teeth out. Like, it was understandable that dude was never going to be a huge star. But when you have someone that's got personalities, got the skills, there's just no reason. I mean, somebody's doing a shit job. I want their job. I'm going to start sending in my resume. I'm going to have the producer help me whip up a resume, start sending them into UFC. Because, I mean, if they just want to pay somebody money to do a shit job, I'll do it.
Yeah, I'll be first online for that. Because, honestly, they're not doing a good job. If Mickey Gall's fighting that low and he's just mopping people, they're not doing a good job, and they're not doing him a service as well. So we'll go to some more topics here. We'll talk about some of the other fights that the UFC's added since the last time that we had talked. But before we get into that, we do say that we are an MMA podcast, but we'll talk about all styles of fighting here. And a boxing match that's actually piqued the interest of myself, really, along with you, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. I'm not 100% sure on the date, but this fight will be coming up. Do you think you'll be tuned into this fight?
This might be one I check out because I don't order a lot of... I don't really... Since mixed martial arts kind of blew up and, I was into wrestling and stuff, I kind of stopped watching boxing. I remember probably the last big boxing fight I remember going... like we do with UFCs, going with my dad and his buddies, was David Tua versus Lennox Lewis. So I was a little ass kid.
I actually watched that fight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember thinking, there's no way you can knock out a Samoan. Like, you're a little racist kid. Mexicans are the best fighters ever. The black dudes are super athletic. And the Samoans can't ever get knocked out. Like, that was just... And he didn't get knocked out, but basically Lennox Lewis just beat his ass with that jab all night long. But the heavyweight division's getting a little fun right now. You got Anthony Joshua. He was supposed to fight Deontay Wilder, but for some reason backed out and took a lot lesser guy. For those people that don't know Tyson Fury, I think he was he's undefeated, and he was the linear champ about 3 years ago. Beat the Klitschko brother that was still really good. He was the linear champ. Went a little crazy. Ended up in some institutions. If you guys, I'm a movie guy. I love a lot of movies. Listening to this dude talk sounds like he's a pikey from the movie Snatch. You could squeeze him in right there with Brad Pitt, and you wouldn't know the difference. And this dude's a legit gypsy. And just super, super awkward, big kind of bumbly looking dude, but insanely athletic, wild fighter. The build-up, I want to say Deontay Wilder's from like Georgia, so he's got like that down south, like just kind of urban down south feel to him. Super, super gnarly fighter. Big guy. I think
he's a mammoth of a human being.
I think he might just be a few inches taller. He's not going to have the height advantage that he usually has.
He's 6'7".
Oh my God! Yeah, how tall is it? When they stood next to each other? I wonder how tall Fury is.
I can check that real quick. Fury is 6'8".
Oh my God! I didn't realize he was that big. I didn't realize either guy was that big.
What was that? What was that movie that they had where like you can strap yourself into like this machine, and is it like battle bots or something?
Oh,
where they'd go out there and fight.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
Where you strap in, you fight the other guy, but you're not necessarily actually fighting them.
Yeah.
You're just fighting as another character that's like a million feet tall. This is what this fight's going to be. And Tyson Fury, before he went crazy, he was actually one of those boxers that I like to follow. Undefeated. So is DeAndre Wilder. DeAndre Wilder, I think he has 39 KOs, and he only has 40 wins. And then Tyson Fury, I think he's 27-0, 19 knockouts. So this is going to be
somebody's
guys,
getting trashed.
If you like knockouts, you have to watch this fight. If you like just guys going out there and just throwing bombs, you have to watch this. And to add in that these guys are 7 and 8 foot tall, this reminds me of like back like Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire home run race, but in the ring. This is going to be phenomenal.
You know, I've not been the biggest boxing fan. When I was a kid, I watched it a lot. I remember my uncles always had HBO boxing. You know, in the 90s, boxing was everywhere. There was boxing every night of the week. HBO always had it, Showtime. It was pretty gnarly, but then it kind of died off. And they still don't do a great job promoting, I don't think. Like, you'll hear of 1 or 2 fights a year. Hell, Triple G and Canelo are going to be fighting again, I think, next month. And there's nobody knows about it. Basically, the biggest thing you know is that Canelo ate some soiled tacos and flopped a test a couple months back.
Yeah.
So this one should be fun, and hopefully the winner of this will get Anthony Joshua, the champ right now, who got Fury's titles after he left, will step up and fight these guys. Because one of these two guys is who he needs to fight, not whatever chowderhead he's getting ready to fight in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and I feel like in boxing we rarely get fights like this where it's actually like the 2 of the top 3 just best guys actually fighting. Usually, you know, they try to avoid each other, which is really weird. And then if you do get the fight, it's Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, 15 years, way too late.
It wasn't always like that, though. You remember like Hagler, Hearns, and Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran was in that. Like, you used to, if you were the best guys, you fought the best guys. I mean, you might have some tune-up fights in between there, but I want to say this is a pretty recent thing within the last 10 years where dudes are like, once they reach the top, when you're coming up through the ranks,
you have to fight everybody.
Well, it's your manager's job to make sure you're fighting people, but you're fighting the right people. But then when you get to the top, you got to fight who the challenger is.
Right.
And Joshua pretty much clearly didn't do that in this last one. I mean, the Wilder fight, I think Wilder was set to make like a tiny fraction of what Joshua was going to make, and he was still going to take the fight. For whatever reason, Joshua didn't. So
this fight's actually penciled in. It's not set in stone yet. November 10th or November 17th, either in Vegas or New York. I think we're going to have to break this fight down. I think we're going to have to watch a little tape on the guys. I've watched Tyson Fury fight a lot. I've only seen the DeAndre Wilder highlights whenever he's like 6-7 inches taller than everybody. Just absolutely beating them down. But I think that the whole, hey, dodge your opponent until the time's right thing was paved by Conor McGregor, or not Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, which is a bummer.
That is something they say Floyd was known for. I mean, he was big on. I can't think of the dude's name. He was a real quick southpaw, but basically Floyd dodged him for a couple years until he felt like he had caught up, or that guy had slowed down, and that maybe Zab Judah, I think, was his name, and I think they still had a pretty close fight, and Zab actually was the last guy to really hurt Floyd. But yeah, I mean, look what he did to Pacquiao. He fought Pacquiao like 5 years late, and it was garbage. So he's the king of that. Or like Conor, when he fought Conor, they talked about it, and when they signed, the fight was like 6 weeks later, in which Conor, I feel like, kind of stole that from Floyd, because he just did that to Khabib. You know, I guarantee Khabib would rather have 4 months to train. Instead, he just gave him like 6 weeks. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a smart business strategy, obviously.
You know,
but as far as, you know, us fighting fans, we just want to see the best.
Well, look at it like this. So Connor wasn't on the books for the past 2 years. He signed the paper to fight. He fights in 6 weeks. We love that. We don't like the 6 months down the road they're going to fight type thing. And it's smart on Connor or Floyd's part because they're training that. They know who they're going to fight. He's been training for Khabib since the end of that Mayweather fight. But he didn't sign the paper until whatever it was 3 weeks ago, and now it's on. So it's, as far as them, it's super smart. Now, we wait longer on the front end, but not as much on the back end. I'd rather have it that way than him sign and say, hey, April 26th, I'm going to fight this dude, and knowing 6 months from now we're going to have a fight.
Yeah, and actually, this past week was the 1 year anniversary of the McGregor-Mayweather fight. So like you said, they sign it. They're fighting in 6 weeks. He took nearly a year to make that decision. So we'll talk about some other fights that are coming up. Obviously, Chuck and Tito are coming up. Woodley and Till, they're coming up. And Woodley and Till will actually be the headliner of the next card we break down for you guys next week. But a fight that was announced this week that kind of perked my ears up a little bit. Anthony Pettis and Tony Ferguson signed for October 6th, same night as the Conor fight. Are you surprised that Pettis is kind of making this turnaround so quick and getting a top-level guy like Tony Ferguson?
Yeah, he kind of snuck himself in there. I mean, he's... I can't say for sure. I want to say he's like 2-3 or maybe 3-4, 3 out of his last 4. And so he gets one solid win over like the number 9th ranked guy, and now he's basically in a title eliminator with Ferguson. Because if he beats Ferguson, I mean, he's gonna probably have to be up there for a title shot, right? Even though Poirier just beat him. So it's kind of a wild one, yeah. Pettis just kind of snuck right in there. Ferguson, what do you think we're gonna see from him? I mean, he just got cleared like a week ago to start training full time. And he's been posting some videos, but he's moving pretty gingerly on that knee. And to me, and you hear a lot of athletes say this, coming back from a knee surgery like that, I don't know if you saw it, he had like a 2-foot scar from like mid-quad all the way down to mid-shin. I'm not sure that. How can you have the confidence there that your knee's not going to blow again, especially when you're a guy that fights as wild as him?
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to have any confidence at all. Maybe the fact that he's fighting a guy who has a sub-500 record over his last 6-7 fights.
But he's still a sniper, and Tony gets hit. Tony always gets hit, and he's been wobbled in those first 1 or 2 rounds on several fights. So to me, the worst matchup for him would be throw him in against your best sniper in your division and hope that he doesn't get hit early or hurt his knee early.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think it was a smart decision. I think it was basically, hey, you get a chance to fight on the Conor McGregor card. Ferguson probably has confidence in himself to take this fight because it would set up perfectly for him to take the winner of Khabib and Conor. I think that he sees he sees Anthony Pettis as a guy whose prime is obviously behind him, and he thinks this is an opportunity that he can jump right in, kind of cut his layoff time down quite a few months, and be able to jump right in there and get that title shot that he's been basically dying for at this point with either Khabib or Conor McGregor, because those are 2 fights that he's just been, waiting in the wings for, and for, injury or whatever reason it is, he just hasn't gotten it. So I think his confidence is obviously there for him to take the fight, and I think his mentality is right to take this fight, but we just got to see how the body's going to hold up. Yeah. Because a knee injury, I mean, that's nothing to shake a stick at.
No, it was if you guys haven't seen it, check out the pictures online. It is hands down the biggest knee surgery scar I have ever seen in my life. But from top to bottom, I'm not joking. It's mid shin up to mid quad, and I don't know what doctor did it to him, but it was Dr. Nick Rivera from The Simpsons is who had to do it from. The guy that says, "Hi everybody." It was Nick Rivera, I'm telling you.
It might have been. So next week we will actually do a full breakdown on the Woodley-Till fight. We'll talk about the whole entire card. Just a little spoiler alert for all you dippers out there. be sure to get your bets in early, because right now Darren Till is the dog, and I think Shackelford and I will be having the dog howl this time next week and talk about how Till's going to pick up that win.
If he's the dog, bet hard.
Bet hard, bet often, bet a lot. And on that note, for Drake, for Leighton, and Mr. Shackelford, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.